Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. It's Friday, it's 5pm, and I'm delighted to tell you it's time to crack a beer and enjoy some very lightly edited nonsense. Bradley, you doing okay?
I'm doing all right, mate. You better not edit out the good stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Have I ever?
Surprisingly on this, no.
I've generally kept your derailments in.
This is a mouthpiece for the Brad chat, the weirdness. Yeah, mate. What we've been busy this week, haven't we? Been up to all sorts of stuff.
We have. It's been, our video this week, it was our biggest video of the year.
That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, we knew that people were always interested and always asking what the difference between stout and porter is, but the response has been incredible.
Yeah.
Some doubt thrown back our way, but sure. History is not set, right?
No, history is written by the victor, or whatever that famous expression is. And when it comes to beer history, it's written by very drunk people who might not remember exactly what happened in the pub. So it's an interesting one, I think. Whenever we touch upon any history of anything, we get a whole sort of swathe of people that sort of say, no, you're totally wrong. And then, within that community of people that are sort of naysayers, they are all kind of in juxtaposition to each other about what they think is the correct history. So it's such a subjective thing that, I think you went to sort of very trusted sources when you kind of learnt the history of stouts and porters, to one of probably the world experts, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of when it comes to British style brewing, historical British style brewing, there's sort of two sources you can really go to. One of them is Martin Cornell, Zithophile, who I love to use because I think he's a great writer and has seriously done his research. The other person is Ron Pattison, who I think tends to focus more on sort of digging out old recipes and stitching things together, but also does a lot on beer history more generally. So those are the two sources. We went with Martin Cornell for this one, and after a couple of days of being live, we got Ron Pattison commenting on the video and saying that maybe, just maybe, there were some flaws in what we said. So firstly, we'll just quickly talk about the video, and then we'll get into what we got wrong according to Ron Pattison. But so this week we answered the age-old question of what's the difference between porter and stout, and we started by talking about what the difference is in modern times, which is we kind of concluded porter is fruity, less roasty, milk chocolatey, and kind of complex and aromatic, and then the stout is roasty, drier, and as we talked about controversially, crisper.
Quaffable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we said like stout is a sipping beer and porter's a thinking beer, which is
Yes.
obviously a huge generalization, but I think it helps perhaps differentiate the two. And of course, that is the exact inverse of what these beers were historically, when stout was the bigger, more complex, more expensive beer that had been brewed to a higher gravity, so was stronger. That's all that stout was. It was stout porter, strong porter. And so porter would have been, the quick drinking, enjoyable, slightly cheaper beer, and stout would have been the complex thinking beer of the perhaps the wealthier people. So it's almost flipped on its head a little bit now.
Yeah, it's funny that. I mean, definitely you can, with a porter being, the dark fruits and the kind of milk chocolate and all that really rich, sweet stuff going on. And it hangs around in your mouth for a long time as well, whereas a stout just kind of goes quite abruptly. That you can luxuriate in that, whereas a stout is just for crushing. Really is, I think, what we came to. Should we get into the comments, Johnny, or do you want to go on it? Yeah.
We should investigate the idea of a stout being crisp, which I think was the comment you picked out, because people wouldn't generally associate probably a 4.5 to 5.5% heavily roasted, thick, dark beer crispy.
No.
But
Johannes Repin certainly did, and he said, changing the narrative of #CrispyBoy. Laughing face, laughing face, laughing face emoji. I think they are crispy boys.
It's interesting because I saw, obviously I follow Bud Light. I follow all the macro brewers on Twitter to see what they're up to. And they recently now, Bud Light, have adopted the term crispy boy. So now that crispy boy is dead to us, we have to say long live crispy boys and just change the meaning. And now we mean roasty stouts.
Got you. So we're taking back ownership of crispy boy.
Taking back the crispy boy.
But we're changing it to the dark stuff. I like it.
Exactly, yeah.
Just to confuse everybody.
That was the aim of this video, pretty much, because the rest of the comments were like, wait, what? Who? But where? Which kind of sums up most of the comments there. So related to that crispy idea, the idea that these stouts, finish really quickly because of the roast and the bitterness that's associated with, we also stumbled upon the idea that actually in lots of hot parts of the world, particularly West Africa, the Caribbean, stouts are really, really popular. And we kind of wondered why that was. And certainly the crispiness was our theory and could be right. But there were a couple of comments that were saying the main reason is because when stout is warmer, it doesn't taste as bad as, like a warm lager, which is probably true.
I reckon that's a very good point. Obviously a warm lager is an awful thing. It just sort of somehow loses everything that's great about it. Whereas if you've got a warm stout, a warm porter, I imagine, could actually be quite pleasant. But a warm stout is definitely tolerable, I would say.
Yeah, like stouts and porters were sometimes served warm with they'd put a hot poker in there, which would caramelize some of the sugars and superheat the beer. So they were originally drunk that way. And definitely, I think when you've got a more complex beer and it warms up, you get more character. When you've got a much simpler beer and it warms up, nothing is gained except it loses its, crisp and refreshing character.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Maybe a stout is innately refreshing and it's not to do with the temperature it's served at. It could be a little bit sort of refreshing in the same way as a coffee. If you're drinking that hot or cold, it can be kind of refreshing if you're a coffee head.
An iced coffee is really refreshing.
Yeah, right.
I think we just don't associate darkness with being refreshing, but actually, in the same way that a lager being, dry and having a really crisp, quick finish from the yeast, stout can do the same by being really dry and having a really quick, crisp finish from the malt. They're two sides of a very different coloured coin.
Yes. Okay. So crispy boys are now stouts. I love it. Love it.
There we go.
What else, Johnny?
It.
What have you? Should we move on to some of the kind of more histrionics? Is that the word? I don't know what histrionics are. Sounds good.
I don't know. It sounds epic though. So let's do that. Yeah. This question of what's the difference between porter and stout has confused beer geeks and beer historians for a very, very long time, because most of the records that we have really are marketing, which isn't always the best way to define a style or a moment in history, because when you're trying to sell something, you might not be honest. I'm sorry if that's a surprise to anybody. And the other reason is, mostly they're looking at recipes as well. And then obviously the work of drunks, as Brad has already talked about. So you have to sort of put all three of those things together and try and work out exactly what the overarching thing that was going on was. So our story was that, porter came along as a response by breweries who had all their distributors were buying their mild ale, aging it and selling it on as stale. So they were getting more money for it. Porter came along as a well-aged beer, so that kind of cut out that middleman profiteering. We got that right, okay? That's mostly correct. But in a comment, Ron Patterson, under the username Kilderkin, says that we got quite a lot wrong. So shall I read it all out?
Yeah, go on then.
So, and I'll preface this by saying that beer historians are often a little bit prickly. So, Kilderkin, Ron Patterson says, historically, there was absolutely no difference. Stout was just a name given to strong porters. In London, porter and stout were regularly party-guiled together, so their recipes were identical. That continued right up to the 1940s. So, party-guiled means using the same mash to get, multiple beers out of it.
Yeah.
On that, we agree with Ron Patterson. We said that, and he says that. The stuff on the 18th century styles you got totally wrong. The two main styles were beer and ale, which came in three colours and could either be sold as mild or stale. Mild ale in the 18th century wasn't weak, lots would have been 7% or more. So, what we were saying when we said there weren't styles back then is they weren't thought of as different styles. Ron Patterson saying is actually, well, what we thought were geographical variations. There were variations within those geographies. So you could probably get three different colours of ale within the same region, made in the same region. So there were kind of styles, but they just wouldn't have been advertised as that. So I guess there was more variation in brewing than we said there was in the video. So thank you very much, Ron, for clarifying that.
Yeah.
He also then says, just as an aside, that nobody was using brown malt after 1850. So our narrative of English brewers still continuing with brown malt, that actually only went on for about 30 years. So while I think that still creates that split between, the drier, pale and roasted malt porters of Ireland and the ones that use brown malt, that schism still happens, but it's not as epic as perhaps we made out in the video. Although he does say that in London, there were, I don't know whether he means multiple breweries or whether it was just Whitbread who were using brown malt until the 1970s.
Okay.
So there you go. I'm glad I've got my glasses on right now because this is very much a glasses kind of conversation.
I mean, I would argue that we kind of got it right, but Ron, sorry, is it Ron? It is Ron, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just keep thinking of Robert Patterson whenever you say his name. The Hollywood actor.
The famous vampire.
Well, yeah, vampire. Now he's going to be Batman, isn't he? So I'm just picturing a sort of a kind of guy sitting at his bright computer screen in the darkness, wearing a sort of Batman. And
every time somebody puts a video explaining the wrong history of porter, there's a bat light in the sky. He gets in his Batmobile,
and he's just saying, I will tell you what is correct, you fools. And he's just sort of doing it in like that kind of real, maybe a Christian Bale style, I can't even do it, but he did the best Batman, like just a fucking mental Batman voice.
I loved those films, but I did just want him to clear his throat,
Yeah, it must have really damaged. In the same way that Tom Hardy, when he does his just bonkers Bane voice, which I think is one of the funniest Hollywood voices ever. Deeply strange. I'm not going to do it because I can't quite remember it, but it was a very affecting voice. Maybe I'm picturing Ron sounding like Bane now, equally angry. But hey, man, I think any knowledge that we can gain is brilliant. So thanks, Ron.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it because he took some time to write that down and gave us some extra information. So it's really good to sort of complement the video with that, and I guess make sure what we put out is what we've learned from our research, and not all of it is going to be 100% correct. And if you go back to our early videos, most of what we say is 100% wrong. So we're not saying that we're the authority on this. This is
exactly. I mean, we're learning along the way.
Yeah,
and we're learning along the way. We're trying to sort of build a community here and spread knowledge. So our intention is never to spread incorrect. I won't say incorrect knowledge, I suppose. So anywhere where we drop the ball, it's always good to hear what we've done wrong. And I think the sort of videos that we put out, especially ones like this, where there's quite a lot of opinions either way, people will read the comments. So it's always worth putting what you disagree with or what you agree with down in the comments on YouTube. As long as you're not trolling, because nobody likes a troll. But all this kind of discussion is really positive, and that's kind of the great thing about YouTube, that it democratizes and gives everyone a voice. We may have the channel, we may be making the videos, but half of the fun is all of the comments that complement it, and let it have a life beyond when we've shot that video, when you've edited the video.
Do you remember the days of video responses on YouTube where there'd be a spat and they'd start making videos in response? I want that about Stout and Porter. That's what I want this video to start.
I think what we should do is make a diss track. We should do like a rap track that's dissing, not Ron necessarily, but maybe dissing.
No, we'd lose that. We'd lose that battle immediately.
We would, although I'm not sure his rapping style is probably better than mine or yours. Ron's a bit older. I
don't think any of us should be rapping, really.
I could probably do a pretty good sort of mumblecore style mumble rap, I reckon.
Okay, well, tweet us or Instagram us if you want to see that, and I'll make sure it's done.
Shit!
I want to hear the history of Stout and Porter mumblecored by Brad.
Oh God, I'm retracting my statement already. I've got I can't sing. You don't have to be able to sing to do mumble rap anyway. So I think mumble rap's quite a derogatory term. Actually, I should probably stop saying it. But it's the sort of mumbly rappers that are out these days, rather than it's just a different style. Basically, it's a different flow. Anyway, I'm sure we'll get loads of people telling me what mumblecore is. Should we talk about what should we talk about, Johnny?
Well, we've got our question next, Bradley.
Oh, perfect. Get us away from the Brad rap chat.
From Brad mumbling about mumblecore.
Or I could do it in the voice of Bane, and you could do it in the voice of Batman.
It's just two men with sore throats basically talking about Porter. I mean, that is essentially what our podcast was. My throat was sore by the end of all that talking.
I think Batman, Christian Bale Batman, would be the perfect guy to front a Halls Soothers advert. Like you've got a real sore throat. You're Batman, you're out all hours of the night, out in the cold, dark streets, rooftops of Gotham, and you've got a tickly cough, and you've got a
it's probably cold up there on the rooftops, isn't it? It's no wonder. Yeah.
That's it. He's basically got a heavy cold the whole time, which is why he sounds like that. Halls Soothers. I think you should reach out to Batman. Maybe they've got a Halls Soothers light that they could project up in the sky that would alert Batman to. Or what about this? Instead of the Batman logo getting put up in the sky when there's an emergency, it's a Halls Soothers one. They do a takeover of the Batman light because they've sponsored him. So instead of wearing all black, murdered out kind of stealth gear, he has to wear Halls Soothers like purple branded cape.
It's
brilliant,
lucky.
Right?
It's lucky that Bruce is a millionaire, because otherwise Batman probably would have had to find some way to monetize himself. And I think as soon as you crowdfund Batman, you've lost it. But if you're going to put a Halls Soothers light in the sky instead of a Batman symbol, no self-respecting criminal is going to be scared of that. So it's lucky
super criminal,
Batman never
no.
had to monetize. Yeah.
No, I'm imagining his
Anyway.
cape looking.
Oh, God,
I'm just.
he's
Oh,
doing
you want to? I'm imagining his cape looking like our Patreon sponsor thing at the beginning of our videos.
just logos all down his back.
Just logos everywhere, all on his back. That'd be amazing. Anyway, let's have this message.
Let's have this question. It's a much more serious question. So this isn't a recorded one. This is a written one. If you want to send me your question, you can either record it or write it and send it to craftbeerboys@gmail.com. This comes from Michael Locke. And he says, do you recommend any online beer subscription services like Beer 52 or Honest Brew? I've only experienced them from Untapped rewards and would be interested to know the ethics behind some of them, like whether they pay the breweries fairly.
Good question.
Big question. So firstly, I need to declare my interest in this. As you guys might know, I used to work for Cave Direct, who own Beer Merchants, the online retailer, and we had a beer club that did not do particularly well. We tried to do what a couple of others are now doing, like the Fuss Club, which is very rare, very interesting and themed beer as well, which is often quite tricky to do. So we do like a lager month, an IPA month, a Belgian sour month, all this kind of stuff. So it was really for the geeks. The guys who aren't doing that, it's an interesting one because essentially what happens is, and I'm sure most people experience this, is you join one of them, you love the first 6, 7, 8 boxes, and then once you've learned enough, you start to go, well, wait a minute, these aren't the breweries that I'm hearing all the excitement about, the breweries that are making the best beer in the world. And so suddenly you start hating on it, and move off into selecting your own beers. You've learned enough, and it's a great role that these subscription services play. And I feel a bit bad for them. I don't feel bad for them, but it's a bit interesting that we denigrate, sort of almost pull the ladder up, going, you're an idiot if you're with Beer 52, even though it's taken so many people on this amazing journey. So from that perspective, if you're beginning in beer, you've just had a couple of beers that have really excited you and you want to learn more, Beer 52 is pretty awesome, particularly because you get the Ferment magazine. And again, I write for Ferment, but it's a really great magazine with amazing writers like Melissa Cole, Owen Walsh, Matt Curtis, Mark Dredge, me. We all write for them, and the quality of it is great. And you'll learn a lot from that magazine and get some decent beers. They're not all going to be winners. And there's lots of other great beer clubs as well. Like Flavorly's pretty good, although I think Beer 52 gets a better range and a better breweries. Honest Brew does a great job as well, although their customer service is a bit all over the place at the moment, I've heard. And then there's sort of the really geeky ones like Fuss Club, which, you look at the beers that go out and they're absolutely amazing. It's very, very expensive, but they're absolutely amazing, the beers that go out. In terms of the ethics behind them, Beer 52 has a really bad reputation for not paying breweries enough. The one thing I would say is, if the breweries don't have to sell to Beer 52 and they decide to, because either they can make the finances work, they can make a beer that will get them profit at that cost, which is typically between like £80 and £1.20 a bottle. But also they might see the marketing opportunity in that, which I'm sure is part of Beer 52's pitch. It's like, we can't, we have to make a profit. We can't buy these beers at huge expense, but it's going out to, it's nearly like 200,000 members at the moment. So in terms of getting your beer in front of people, that's powerful. And it depends, the brewery has to make that decision. I don't think the consumer can, because they're not involved in that discussion or in the pricing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you feel about that sort of ethical dilemma, Brad.
Who knows, man? I think, it probably do squeeze people. I think that it can be a great gift to people. So, like, if you're a bit of a beer geek and you want to get your mates into beer, you could send them a subscription. Or, you want to get your dad to drink something other than Boddingtons or Tetleys or whatever they might be drinking. I think it can be a good way
those anymore?
No, probably not. I'm just thinking of 90s adverts, but if you've maybe you've got an older relative or someone that you can't see in the pandemic, it's a nice gift, isn't it? You can send them a crate of beers, and they're quite affordable really for what you get. They might not be the most exciting beers or the most relevant beers from the most relevant breweries that you would want to be trying. But I think anything that can get the word of craft beer out there is a force for good, potentially. I mean, what I would say is we although we don't do a beer subscription, we do quite a lot of live taste-alongs on Craft Beer Channel.
He's segueing, everybody. He's segueing.
I'm segueing, Johnny. I'm segueing, but I'm also sort of making a comment where with a beer subscription box, you're kind of left to your own devices to drink those things. Whereas I think the more powerful way of doing it is to drink along with others, to kind of share knowledge, share an experience, almost pub-like, where you can be in your home and you're all kind of watching someone drink along. I think that's a powerful tool that a lot of these guys are not using yet. Beer 52 or whatever, if they were to do live drink-alongs, I mean, we've mooted this before. I think it's a no-brainer. I don't know why they're not doing it. I don't know why people aren't knocking our door down to say, hey, come do live taste-along for our monthly subscription box. But, I think that is a kind of missing element to a lot of these things.
Well, I mean, as I thought you were segueing to, we do, of course, do a monthly tasting box with a brewery or along a theme via Beer Merchants, and we do those live shows. And it's a nice way to finish by saying that we do have two coming up very soon, two very special events, in fact. One is on the 27th of March with 5 Points, and we're doing a digital cask ale festival. So there'll be a video about this going live on Sunday from us, and all the social starts on Monday. But basically, you'll be able to buy a mini keg of one of their 3 amazing cask beers, and also, if you want, bottles and cans of the rest of their range. And then we'll be having, on the 27th of March, basically a cask festival where we've got cask round tables with Pete Brown and some breweries about the future of cask. We've got Martin Cornell coming on to talk about the history of porter. To which we'll put some of Ron Patterson's thoughts, I'm sure. And then we've also got pizza matching. We've got like a little lesson in what the difference between cask and keg is and how it has to be cared for a lot more and all this kind of stuff going on. So that's one live show we've got coming. And then a week later, we've got one with Siren. So Siren are trying to host a proper craft beer festival from their brewery, and we'll be one of the air quotes stages. So there'll be the Craft Beer Channel stage, when there'll be lots of food matching, talks, brewing information, and taste alongs going on our channel as well. And details will come out probably the week after next, all around that. But the case is already for sale, so I'll put a link to that in the descriptions as well. We've got lots of live events, and I think you're right, Brad, that a lot of these subscription clubs are putting the beer out there really well, but not necessarily putting the information out there at the same time, which, something we'd love to help out with if anybody's listening. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and what essentially amounts to the historical differences between Batmans. We'll be back on Wednesday with the second episode of our 100k homebrew adventure, for which we've got a really exciting finish, which I won't spoil. But it's going to be an epic video, so I can't wait for you guys to see that. And, of course, we'll be back on Friday at 5 p.m. for some more lightly edited, although this week maybe slightly heavier edited, nonsense. Love and beer. The Bubble Podcast is brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's Craft Beer Channel. Head to youtube.com/the Craft Beer Channel to watch this week's video and over 400 more exciting episodes. If you love what we do, please do subscribe and even join our Patreon at patreon.com/craftbeerchannel. Love and beer.